Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Powering Change. This is part three of our webinar series looking at a new programme of grants and support for businesses and community organisations in North Northamptonshire, looking to save energy and also cut carbon at the same time. We've just gone over the hour, so I think we'll kick off. There's quite a few people joining. We'll just go through some housekeeping first. We've muted everybody today. That just makes it easier for us to sort of take questions. But obviously, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat window, please feel free to do that. You'll have noticed that we're recording this session. So we will be sharing that online through our YouTube channel and our website, poweringchange.urbanforesight.com. If you've got any questions at all for our presenters as we go through today, feel free to put them in the chat, and you can keep those open for everybody so that others can see. I think that's quite a good way for other people to understand what questions you have and to kind of pick up additional points. So yeah, we've got various different points where we can take questions, so feel free to put them through as soon as you think about them. Okay, so Powering Change Part 3. We've already had two webinars on this. The first was on the 28th of August and the last one was last Tuesday. Both of those are available to view again if you've missed them. We're also running some repeats from next week. So if you'd like to join us for another live session, feel free to sign up for those at our website. So today, we'll do a bit of a recap about what's on offer, the grants that are available to you. But primarily today, we are looking at how to develop your carbon reduction plan and the platform that we have freely available to you to take you through that. So it's kind of self-guided, but there's additional support around that to develop your carbon reduction plan. So I'll pass over to Molly and she'll run most of that at most of the session. So you can see what we're covering today. We're looking at your kind of carbon baseline report, also a meeting that you can have with SmartCarbon to go through that report, and then how you go into developing your carbon reduction plan. And Molly will show you the platform so you can see how all of this information is entered. You'll then have the opportunity to have a meeting later on in the programme to catch your progress. And again, Molly will cover that. Just a reminder, this is part of a full sort of structured program of support with webinars, but also one-on-one support for you. Today we're looking at creating your carbon footprint and carbon reduction plan specifically, but we have other webinars available on the kind of earlier topics. The whole programme is funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So that's a government programme which provides local investment funding to improve pride in place and increase life chances, focusing on communities, place, local businesses, people and skills. So this is entirely funded by central government. So all the support that you get through this programme comes from that grant, and we're not asking you for anything additional. Just a quick bit about us. So we're Urban Foresight. If you've already been on these webinars, you'll be familiar with us on SmartCarbon. My name's Annalisa. We work generally across the UK, but also in other places across the world. And we focus on projects that improve lives, protect the environment, and create new economic opportunities, quite often in kind of local authority areas. We're joined by SmartCarbon today, our partners on this project. They've got around 1,000 clients doing exactly what they're doing to support you in this process. So they've got a lot of experience of running carbon reduction planning. Okay, this is just a reminder of the programme itself. So you've got access to decarbonisation grants, and we've got links to those available in this webinar, the slides that will accompany it, but also on our website. That should be really clear to you. We've got this series of educational webinars for you, and also one-on-one support to help you go through the grant application process, but also that carbon reduction plan process as well. And primarily access to this tool, which enables you to kind of dip in and out of it whenever you want to add your data. So this programme is open now through essentially until the end of January in terms of the support that you get. So today, obviously, we're looking at the SmartCarbon platform itself. We've actually got an in-person event coming up on Friday, so we'll tell you a bit more about that at the end of this session. The grants themselves close in a few weeks' time. So the one-on-one support that you have associated with the grant applications is available until that point. There's also one-on-one support available to help you develop your carbon reduction plan. And to get that, you'll need to be able to complete your carbon reduction plans by the end of January. But I think most people will be in a position to do that before then. If you're getting grant funding for projects themselves, those projects will need to be delivered by the end of February, and then you'll have to report on those in March so that you can get the final grant funding associated with it. Okay, grants are already live. This is just a really brief summary of what is covered in our other webinars, but just to give you a flavour of what's on offer. So it's £1,000 to £5,000 available for SMEs. On the business grants, there is a match funding part of that, but it funds projects across quite a range. So increasing energy efficiency, moving to low carbon economy and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So that's primarily really focusing on the kind of built environment and emissions associated with your buildings. So those kind of things like energy efficiency upgrades or installing solar panels, that kind of thing. Similarly for the community organisation grants, this will fund energy efficiency, quite a wide range of things, but other energy saving measures as well as transport. So if you're looking to decarbonise transport provision that you might offer, this would also be covered within this grant. And for the grants for the community organisation don't have any match funding there, so they're also available up to £15,000. So there's a little bit more if you're a community organisation. It is a competitive process, so there will be certain things that you need to demonstrate. All of these grant applications will be assessed together. So the deadline is the 20th of October. All of the grants will be looked at together after that date. So there's no advantage to getting your grants in early, other than it might be something that you want to get off your desk and have ticked off, and so you can focus on other things. But a lot of the way in which they will be reviewed and scored is around having clear timescales and a series of quotes that show you've understood and have a clear plan about what your project will look like. It'll look at energy impact for businesses. It's also looking at whether you can demonstrate business resilience and growth, and also whether there is a need for this, whether the grant is going to support something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. I think one of the important things about this is that you'll score more highly if you can show that the impact on your energy use and your carbon reduction is part of that kind of wider strategy to reduce energy across your business. So that's something that you might well score more highly on if you're also part of this carbon reduction planning process. So if you're looking at your organisational emissions as a whole as part of a longer term view as to how you decarbonise, I expect that will be scored slightly more highly. The community organisation grants have similar sort of criteria attached to them. We won't go into much more detail here, but safe to say that there is additional technical support available to you. So for example, if you are looking to install something like solar panels, we can give you some potential solar generation calculations and estimated energy reductions and estimated cost reductions associated with that as part of that application. You can book some one-to-one sessions with us, and you'll be able to do so through a link that's available on our website, so we can go through those applications with you. We'll also be there at the in-person event on Friday to walk you through the applications themselves, what they contain. If you've got any questions today, obviously add them to the chat. We'll take them at the end, just so we can get everything through the more exciting stuff today. Obviously, if you want to email us, feel free to do so. All of this information is on the poweringchange.urbanforesight.com website, should you need it. So without further ado, I shall pass over to Molly to take us through the SmartCarbon platform itself and how you go about starting your carbon reduction plan. Molly.
Thanks very much, Annalisa, and hello everybody. Thanks for joining us. What I'm going to be doing today is starting off with just a very brief recap on what we covered in the previous webinar, because I'm aware that some of you might have already sat through that. So keep that bit quite short, and then it'll be straight into a demo of the platform itself. So I'll show you how to enter data into the platform and what to expect. Just to mention, my colleague Lee Jackson's here with me. He will be available during the Q&A at the end to help answer any of your questions. So throw all the difficult ones to Lee, please. Right, okay, next slide then, please, Annalisa. Okay, so just to recap on scopes. So as we mentioned previously, we split, or the Greenhouse Gas Protocol splits the emissions into 3 different scopes of emissions, scopes 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 is your direct emissions. And I like to see that as if you could put a plastic bag over sort of all of your own assets, the gases that you'd actually catch out of your assets, that they will be your Scope 1 emissions. Scope 2 and 3 are indirect, so they are not gases that are coming out of your assets, but they are emissions that you are indirectly responsible for because you have purchased something and it's been made for you somewhere else, for example. If you just do one click, please, Annalisa. Just to highlight that Scope 2 is specifically electricity, so it's slightly different from Scope 1, which is your sort of the fuel you burn within your own assets, both in your buildings and your vehicles. And the reason it's in a different scope is because the emissions associated with that electricity are coming out of a power station somewhere else, which is so it's not coming out of your assets. Next slide, please. What we covered in the last webinar was your approach to reporting and what you include within your what's termed as an organisational boundary. And we are setting up your reporting based on an operational control approach. And we're using that as a standard approach for simplicity for everybody here. And what that means is that in terms of your assets, what's included in your Scope 1 and 2 is things that you have operational control over. On to the next one, please. And then here is just a quick summary, again, a quick recap of the categories that we're including in your reporting. So the initial basis of this is to make sure that your report is compliant with what's required under PPN 006, which is the requirements if you're bidding for major public sector tenders, and that may also be adopted by the public sector for smaller tenders as well on a kind of them choosing to apply that standard. So they include Scope 1 and Scope 2, so that's your emissions from your buildings, your company vehicles, and your electricity. And then 5 categories of Scope 3, your indirect emissions. So that includes transportation and distribution, your waste, your business travel, employee commuting, and then your any downstream, so there's downstream transportation and distribution. Next click, please, Annalisa. The thing that's calculated automatically is some additional emissions associated with your fuel and energy activities. And then the next one, please. And what we've also included in the structure of your report is to include your purchase goods and services and your capital goods. So although that's not required under PPN 006, it can be really significant. And we feel at SmartCarbon that it's a bit of an omission if it's not actually included in your report. And then one final one. Depending upon whether or not you operate from a building where you control your energy use, so you have operational control over it. If you don't, we can open up this category for you, which means that your energy use in your building is reported slightly differently because it's somebody else's building. Next slide, please. Just to recap again on the principles of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, the 5 principles are transparency, relevance, accuracy, completeness, and, there's the words repeated there. Consistency should be the other word. So in terms of transparency, we need you to record any assumptions and estimations if you've got any gaps in your data. So you are transparent about the way you calculated your emissions. Relevance, if a particular category isn't relevant to you, so for example, if you don't have anything that's transported to you, for example, what we'll do is we will pre-enter 0 into that category for you, so it still appears, so you haven't ignored it, which you can prove that you're compliant for that PPN 06, but it's not relevant to you, so it's entered as 0. In terms of accuracy, we've pre-configured the platform for you. So we've got a balance of using more accurate primary data for you, where it's you have easy access to that data, and less accurate but easier to obtain secondary data, where you for things like travel claim expenses, where you're reporting on spend, where it's easier to get hold of that information. In terms of the completeness, we will be including all of those categories that I've just outlined on that previous diagram, and we'd ask that you try to obtain the data to fill in those categories if it's not immediately available. Consistency, the last one, our recommendation is that you try to organise your data and file it, store it in a central period, so that when you come back to reporting in subsequent years, assuming that you continue to do this on an annual basis, you can remember the way you did it and do it in a consistent way. And we're going to provide a data tracker template for you, which is totally optional if you want to use it, but it helps you to remember where you got your data from. Next one, please. What we went through in some detail in the last webinar is going through each of the different lines on the reporting platform and the type of data that you needed to collect and the units that you'd collect that in, and where you typically might find that data. For example, you might find it in energy bills. And we went into some extra guidance around some of the categories about what to include in that particular category or activity. Next one, please. And just one last thing, before you enter the data, just to check it, and just pulled out a few kind of really common things that can trip people up. The units is an easy one to get wrong, so check that you're whether you're collecting kilograms or tons, because it can make a difference of a factor of 1,000 if you use the wrong unit. And again, similarly, whether you're measuring in miles or kilometers, for example. Another thing that can often get missed or get done a little bit incorrectly is that your period matches your reporting year. So if, for example, you are choosing to report from January to December, make sure that the activity, so your energy bills, match that same period. And then if you are summarising any of your data, maybe in an Excel spreadsheet, to add it up before you put it into the platform, then just double check your formula, that they're picking up all of your entries on your spreadsheet. Next one, please. Okay, so into the platform demo. So Annalise is going to stop sharing and I'm going to share my screen. Just bear with us for a second here. And I've got several different windows that I'm going to be jumping between. So bear with me if there's a few seconds transitioning, but I will hopefully do it as smooth as possible. Okay, so hopefully you can see that there. Can you see that, Annalisa? Yeah, okay, great. So this is showing you what you'll first receive from us at SmartCarbon. So the initial step, as we explained previously, is we have an online form which is hosted on the Powering Change website. That asks you your information about your organisation, and that helps us to tailor your reporting platform to you. And once we've done that, we will send you your login details, and this is what it will look like when it appears. So there's a link to the calculator, your email address that you use for reporting, and a generated password. So you can either follow that link to the platform, or you can go on the SmartCarbon website, and there's a little login icon at the top, and you come to this login window. So I've already put mine in there to log in, and click login. And then you are then into your account that's been set up for your organisation. So I've just got a demo one here as an example. The first thing you might want to do is change your password so it's secure and it's one that only you know. So if you go to new user at the top, and you can change your password up here. Okay, so this is the dashboard that you'll see, and initially you won't see very much because we haven't got much data in there yet. To start entering the data, we go on to company, and then you'll see on this period here, you will see your reporting period. So again, we will have already set up the reporting period to match the period that you've said you want to use as your baseline. And for that, we are recommending that you align it with your financial year and that you use the most recently completed year. So if you can see it's in blue and data collection in progress, so that means that's live. You click onto that, and this is where you then see your office space here, your site that you want to use. And what we're doing is, again, for simplicity, collating all of your information, just adding it together and putting it in once for all of your activity, for all of your sites. So if you've got more than one site, or if you've got more than one building, add it together first and then put it in once. So we'll click on that, and this is the main window you'll see, where you can see all the different activities where we can enter data for your organisation. It looks like a very long list at the moment. It won't be when it arrives to you, because we would have selected the specific activity that's relevant to you from what you've told us in the form. So for example, when we've got fuels here, it might be that you just have natural gas, in which case we will have deleted the other options. So all you'll see is the natural gas. What we'll also do, if a category isn't relevant to you, as I said before, we will enter in 0 so it doesn't disappear, but so you don't have to do anything. So for example, on company vehicles, if you've told us you don't have any, we will probably just leave in one category, and we will put 0 in, and it's already done for you, so you don't have to worry about that. So what I'm going to do is just move on to some made up data so I can show you how to enter it. So I'm just going to open that up, and I'm just going to look at a couple of categories here. So hopefully you can see a spreadsheet now. Can you see that, Annalisa? Is that showing on the screen? You see a spreadsheet. Okay, so this is just some made up energy data that you would need to enter into the platform. So what I've got here is what you might have a load of electricity bills. You may have a system that spits it out for you nicely, or you may just have bills that you receive through the post. So you might want to then collate that onto a spreadsheet if you need to, so you've got it all in one place rather than on individual bills. You don't have to, you can put it straight in from the bills if that's the easiest way for you to do it. So I've got here a range of dates down in the column, and then I've got 2 buildings in my imaginary company, and I've got the gas and electricity here. So the first thing to do is to make sure you select the right period. So in my example here was April through to March. So that's the period of data that I want to use and put into the platform for my baseline year. I've then added together my electricity across the 2 buildings, and I've got a total amount in here. So this is the numbers that I then need to put into the platform. Now you have an option if you can either put in each amount that's specific to the month, or what you can do is put in the total amount, and the platform then averages that out across all the months. That's the quickest thing to do. The only advantage of doing it on a month-by-month basis, if you wanted to kind of interrogate it in the future and see what how your carbon footprint might vary across the year. But if you're not too bothered about that, the simplest way is to just put in the total here. So they're your total figures. Just to quickly show you how you might have data in a slightly different format. You might get quarterly bills, for example, in which case that's fine. Just again, make sure that they match your period and then add them up in that way, and you can see the totals come out as the same total. If you end up in a slightly more awkward situation, say you get quarterly bills and they don't align, so you might start from February, for example, rather than from April. What we recommend you do is that you then just do some kind of apportionment. So you might want to use a third of that initial bill for April to represent April. And similarly, for your last quarter, you might want to use 2/3 of that last bill. So it's a judgment call really on what you might need to do to get as accurate data as possible on your energy usage. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to shift that out of the way so I can still see it. And I'll show you how to then enter that. So I'm just going to look at electricity. So what we do is we scroll down. Electricity is in scope 2 and it's national grid. So we can click on that link there to national grid. You can do a shortcut, which is this plus sign, but I'll just click on here at the moment to national grid. And this is the data entry window here. At the moment, you can see that there's 0 in there at the moment for each month. So to add in data, what we need to do is click on this button here that says Add National Grid Details. And you've got this extra window that comes up. You have to select the period that your data relates to. So I'm going to do the quicker way, and I'm just going to put it into the whole year. So I'm going to change that April to March 2025. So that's a whole year. You have to put the total number of units. So just checking against my file I showed you before, it's 24,387. And then you have to check the unit type, which is kilowatt hours. Collection method, you've got 3 options here, and there's a little question mark if you wanted to check what they mean. For this one, it's primary data. So this is kind of the actual real data I've got from my electricity bills. I haven't had to estimate anything on that data. The reference here is for you to remember where you've got that data from. So I'm just going to put in my file name, which is electricity, which I'm not going to be able to type while being watched, and gas. Don't worry about putting the cost per unit. That's useful if you want to compare cost information at the same time as carbon, but it's not essential that you put that in there. And then click Save. And you can see now that for each month, it's divided that total of 24,000 and something, divided by 12, and it's put an equal amount in every month, which is correct. If I then navigate back to where I was before, I just click on Office Space Period Overview, and you'll be able to see when you go back down to National Grid that you've done that and you've got ticks in each box. So just to, I'm just going to go back one step on that to show you what you should do as well, is once you've added that data in, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see I've already done it here. You can, what you should do is upload your evidence so that, again, if you go back the next year and you want to check the data that you used to put into the platform, you've got your file attached in the platform there. So what you do is click Add Attachment. You then browse for the file. So I've got it here on my desktop. I'd select that file and then open it and then upload, and it appears. So I've now got it on there twice. Okay, so to show you the next one I'm going to enter in is we're going to look at business travel. So business travel is here. It's under a few different categories. So we are splitting it in between rail and road travel, which we're doing by spend. So that'll be from your mileage claims or your train tickets, for example. Flights we're doing separately, and we are recording flights by mileage, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, because flights can be quite significant, and if we do it by spend, it can be much less accurate because flight prices vary enormously depending on the airline. So they're the categories that we fill in for that. Also, if you have any hotel stays, this is the category where you would record hotel stays. So I'm just going to go on to my made up data file here. So you might get an example of what you might pull off your finance system here. Again, a whole load of months, and you might have a load of different expense types. So what you'll first need to do, again, is to make sure you select the right period. So again, I'm starting here in April 24 and going down to March 26. What we'll need to do then is take out flights and deal with flights separately, because we're not, as I said, we are not measuring flights by spend, we're measuring that by mileage. So what I've done on these 2 tabs already is I've separated those 2 data types. So this is now just looking at road and looking at rail. And what I've done is I've just then ordered those entries so that I've got all my mileage together and I've got all of my train travel together, and I've summed those up separately. So you can see here, this is kind of the information now that's been summed up and ordered, so it's ready to put into the platform. If you're not great on Excel, you don't have to use Excel. You can add it up manually. You can do it on a piece of paper and add it up using a calculator. It's totally up to you. It's just something that I find useful and something I'm useful, but it's not absolutely essential. You can do it in other ways. So that's my mileage and my train travel there. What I've done with flights is I've separated those out, and for this demo organisation, it was just 2 flights. And I've recorded that they're economy flights, so we've got different emissions associated with business class compared to economy class. Economy class has lower emissions because you're taking up less space in your seat. And what I've recorded is the airport I flew from and to. So this is Birmingham to Milan. There are loads of different websites you can find that tell you air mile calculators, and all you need to do is select one of those, put in your departure and arrival airports, and they will tell you what the distance is. So you can note that down, make sure if it's a return flight that you then double it, so you've got the full flight there, and again note down whether you're measuring miles or kilometers to make sure that you enter the data in the right way. Also note down whether it's short haul, which is sort of UK to Europe really, or long haul, which is further afield, because again there are different emission categories for different distances of flights. So again, I'm going to move that out of the way and show you how to enter that. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so let's put in, I'll just do rail travel as an example of the spend. It's the same route as we did for electricity. Click on the title, and then go down again, and here you see rail travel here, 0 at the moment. And then click on this blue button, which is about halfway down, add rail travel. I'm going to do it the quick way again and do it for the whole year. So select to March 2025. And the total spend I've got on trains from my spreadsheet was £2,211.06. And that is in pounds. Collection method is primary data again, that is the actual money that I spent. So I got that from my train tickets. I didn't estimate it in any way. I'm going to put in my file name, which is business travel demo, and then save that. And again, you can see that it's appeared and it's apportioned it evenly over those months. And then again, I've already added it as my evidence file as my attachment. If you put it in and you realise you made a mistake, it's really easy to get rid of. Unfortunately, you can't go in and amend it on here. This isn't editable. But what you can do is where you can see that total emissions line come up from that data you've entered. If you want to delete it, you just select that and you delete, and then you can start again and re-enter the data. So that's that one, and I'll just show you flights, as that's a little bit different. So one of the flights I've got here is short haul economy. So I just need to find that. So we've got business travel, flights, short haul, economy class. And you can see it's slightly different here. It's in kilometers rather than pounds. Add the details. Again, even though it's just one flight, for ease, I'm just going to put it in for the whole year. I measured it in kilometers, so make sure I collect kilometers there. It's primary data again, because it is, I've found out that is the actual mileage between those 2 places. It's the same file. It's got my evidence in, so I'm putting that same file in for the reference. And or have I put in the units? So the units were, for my short haul flight, was 2,152.2 kilometers, and that's appeared in there. So it's apportioned it, which is a bit odd because it's just one flight. You could just put it in for 1 month if you wanted, but if you've got multiple flights, it might be easy just to put in for the total amount. Just one more that I'm going to show you, which can sometimes be a little bit more complicated to sort your data in the first place. So this one is your purchased goods and services. So this is everything that you've spent on goods and services that you've brought into your organisation. So I'm going to open up my made up data file again to show you here. It may be, depending on what you are, you may have very small amount of expenses, but if you're a business organisation, you might have quite a few hundreds of lines of entries of things you spent with different suppliers. So this is my example here. Again, put in a ring around the dates I want to that match my month. And then I've got sort of made up company names down here, the different companies I've spent money on and the amount of money. And just to recap on what we said before, you need to exclude anything that we'll be reporting on under a separate category to make sure we're not double counting. So exclude any payments you've made to your energy companies, because we are accounting for that in terms of the actual energy, so in kilowatt hours, for example, on a separate line. So you don't want to count the cost of it here as well. Capital goods, we're reporting on a different line. So capital goods are things that actually become capital assets. They're sort of bigger items that you use for the longer term. Waste collection services, similarly, we account for waste in terms of the amount of waste that you've produced. So don't include money that you've spent on any waste collection companies. And similarly, transportation and distribution, if you use couriers or have goods transported to or from you, don't include that cost, because again, that is included in a different category. Also things that you might have from your expenditure reports, but isn't related to actually you receiving a good or a service from a supplier, you need to exclude. And these typically would be salaries. They're not accounted for. Any tax payments that you make to HMRC, for example, exclude, although do make sure that you include any VAT on the cost that you're paying to your suppliers. So just take off your sort of lump sum payments to HRC for paying your tax bill, and rent, so that comes out as well. So what I've done here is I've put a strike through any of those companies where it's double counting. So for example, my energy company, I've taken all of those out, and I've highlighted these ones, which are capital goods. So I bought a whole load of computers here, and we bought a new company car here. So those are coming out. I'll just show you those quickly first. So I'll put those on the capital goods on a separate tab, so they go into category 2 rather than category 1 for your capital goods. And then looking at the longer list of your goods and services, what you need to do is you need to first of all sort them into by supplier. So if you've got multiple payments to the same supplier, and then sort those, if you can, by the type of supplier they are. You might sort and record your spend data by category already if you do. So sort it by category. The next thing you need to do is on the platform, we have, if I just flick to the platform, you'll see that we've got a selection of different categories of spend, as you can see here. We do have more categories than this on the platform, but what we've done is select those categories that we think are most commonly used by organisations. So hopefully you will find that once you sort your spend, you'll be able to find a category that matches that kind of spend. If you have a significant amount of spend for something that does not fit into one of these categories, just get in touch with us, and we should be able to open up a different category that matches that if it's something perhaps a little bit specialist. So we've got that by products, and then we've got another list by for services, another list of categories there. So going back to your data, what you'll need to do is then match those to those categories. So for example, I've got 2 payments here to a catering company. That's a service provision. They've provided a catering service. And so I've matched those to the category on the platform, which is 56 food and beverage services. Do that for all of your suppliers. And then again, you can then summarize it of your total amount spent against each category. So this is probably the most time-consuming bit out of your reporting. Not everything is as complicated as this. I'm just showing you this because this is the one that you might need to spend a little bit more time on to get it into the right categories. So once you've done that, again, create a total amount that you've spent for each of those categories, and then you'd enter that into the platform in the same way as we did for the other spends. What I'm just going to move on to now is showing you what to do when you've finished. So when you've finished, what you should see, hopefully, is a green tick on every line. If you've entered in just for a month rather than averaged it out across the year, then you might just get a tick in that one particular month, and that's fine. It doesn't matter that you don't have anything in the other months. So once you've finished, what we need to do is say that you're complete. So you go to the actions button here and you can click on this bit that says mark this period as complete. What it will then ask you to do is to insert the number of full-time equivalent staff that you've got working for you and your floor area. And the reason it asks you for this is so that you can then work out, it's called an intensity metric, so that you can see my carbon footprint for every member of staff is this, for example, or for your floor area is this. And that means that if your organisation grows, for example, and most of your footprint will grow with it while you're trying to shrink your footprint, you can see that actually by member of staff or by floor area, it's still going down. So once you've entered those in, you click mark as complete. If you realise, oh, actually, no, I hadn't finished it or I've made a mistake, you can easily click reopen this period and you're back to where you were. You can then navigate back to here and you need to mark this as complete as well, or you finalise this period because it might be on more complicated reporting, you might have more than one office that you're reporting against. So in here, we click finalise this period. Here it will prompt you to put in your turnover, which is just another metric so you can see what your carbon footprint is per turnover. So that's entered as 1,000, finalise. And then you can see you've got a tick here and you can see that your reporting is marked at complete on that particular date. And then when you go back to your company dashboard, you can see now that's changed into completed here. And on your dashboard, you will then see some pie charts which give you a breakdown of your carbon footprint. The final thing to show you is how to get your reports from it. So once you've finished, click back onto that period and you can generate report. And then it's your carbon footprint report. You click on that. That downloads for you and you can close it. And this is what it looks like when you've downloaded it. Just opening up here. So it will show you your scope 1 emissions, scope 2 emissions here, and the total for scope 1 and 2. And that's your intensity metrics that I just mentioned there. And then it will go into scope 3. It will tell you all the units you entered and the associated carbon emissions. And then on the last page are some notes. So this goes back to the principles behind the greenhouse gas reporting that I mentioned before about making sure that we record for transparency, we record anything that we've estimated, which is in this section here. So you need to, if you had made estimations, so for example, say you didn't have, you were missing an electricity bill and you had to estimate based on the previous year, for example, you would put in this section here, electricity bill for April 2024 is estimated based on April 2023, for example. So you would list anything you had to estimate there. If you had to exclude anything for a particular reason, write down what you excluded and why you excluded it. So it's all about this kind of transparency of what your carbon footprint represents. What you can then do is save that, send that to us, and then we use this as the basis of developing that further into your carbon reduction plan. So that's my demo over, and then I've just got a few more slides. I can hand over to you to share again, Annalisa, just to finish off. Okay, so what we've got here is just 3 slides just for your kind of background information. We'll send these out later, which is essentially just a summary of what I've demoed here. So you've got sort of written instructions. And yes, so the next, just a couple more things to highlight. So once you've had a good go at collecting your data and entering it into the platform, book a meeting with us, and we will go into your platform with you. We can answer any of your questions about, I struggled with this, or I'm not quite sure how to do this. And we'll have a look at the data you've entered, and we'll do a sense check as to whether or not it looks about right. To book that meeting, we'll send you a link to a booking form so you can choose your own appointment with us. Next one, please. The carbon reduction plan. So there is a government template for, this again goes back to this PPN 006 standard of what should be included in a carbon reduction plan. And what the template includes is that you have a commitment to achieving net zero, what your baseline emissions footprint is, and that's exactly what will be on that report that comes out of the SmartCarbon platform. So that's the kind of the fundamental building blocks of it. It also includes your current emissions reporting, but for yourselves, your baseline report will probably be your most recent report. So that section is just blank because you are just at baseline stage. What emission reduction targets you want to set, so whether you're going in line with the government target of getting to net zero by 2050, or whether you want to do anything more ambitious in advance of that, and whether you want any interim reduction targets. So, for example, some companies are choosing to aim for to halve their emissions by 2030, for example. What you then need to list on there is any projects that you've either already completed or you plan to do to reduce your carbon. And those are the things that we can help you identify what things are appropriate for you. And we'll be looking at your baseline carbon footprint to see what the hotspots are and what the most appropriate projects would be from you. And then finally, there's a section where you have to do a declaration and sign off that that plan is accurate to the best of your knowledge. Next one, please, Annalisa. So what we'll do, once you've downloaded your report from the platform on your baseline, added in those extra sections about any estimations you've made or anything that you've excluded, we'll then email that to us. We'll add in these extra few sections to build it into a carbon reduction plan, and then book another meeting with us, and we can go through those sections with you, as I said, about what your targets you might want to set and what activity is ideal for you to get your carbon footprint down to net zero. We'll aim to fill that in during the meeting. It might be that we do a little bit of work afterwards, depending on how far we get with that. I think that might be one more slide, Annalisa. So next steps, I probably mentioned this already. So just to recap, fill in the form on the Powering Change website. We create your account for you that's tailored to your activities. We send you the login details and the data tracker if you want to use it, and a link to book a review meeting with us. Crack on with collecting your data and have a go at entering it. We'll meet with you to review how you're getting on, and then leave you to finalise your data entry, and you can mark that as complete. Next slide. Download the report, fill it in, send the report to us. We'll add in the extra sections, and then we'll meet with you to discuss that carbon reduction planning, and then we'll finalise that carbon reduction plan document to you, and then you're done. Just finally, we mentioned this in previous webinars, but just to recap on the level of support. So our aim is to empower you to collate and enter your data accurately. We're not able to do that on your behalf. So again, just rewatch the webinars if it's helpful to you, just to make sure that you understand how to collate that data and how to add it up and how to enter it into the platform. The review meetings, the purpose of those is really for us to answer your questions and sense check the data, but we can't go through it line by line and check the accuracy for you. And on those carbon reduction plans, what we'll be looking to do is identify the decarbonisation actions that are of highest priority to you. We won't be able to quantify exactly how far each of those actions is going to help you in getting to net zero. But as we said before, if anybody does think that they want to work with us in more depth, we're more than happy to talk to you about that and take you on as an individual client. Next one, I believe that might be my last slide. Yes. Thank you for bearing with me through all that detail, everybody, and looking forward to get your questions.
Thanks very much, Molly. That was great. I've definitely seen some questions popping up in the chat, and I know I've answered one myself. Claire, can you take us through them? I think there's actually a couple that Lee might have answered already, but actually might be worthwhile as just picking up as well.
Yeah, so there's been a wee bit of flurry of activity in the chat box, but yeah, let's just read them out just so everyone can get a steer on the answers. So Marion had asked, would the grant cover applications for solar lighting for a community organisation's car park? So Annalise, I think you answered that in the chat, but if you want to reiterate.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects of that. Firstly, in terms of the actual kit itself, yes, that's kind of eligible as something that the grant will pay for, but it would depend on who's responsible, who owns those assets. If it's North Northamptonshire Council, then the grant wouldn't cover that because it won't cover the local authorities' assets. But if it's something that the parish council is responsible for example, or indeed if it's a privately owned car park that the community group is responsible for, then it should be covered.
Perfect. And then Alex had asked, is stock classed as capital goods for this? Which Leah, I think you kind of managed to answer that as well.
Yeah, it's a good question though. Lee, can you kind of explain in a bit more detail because I think that's probably a question that other people have too.
Yeah, so I know Molly covered the majority of your purchased goods we're going to measure under subcategory 1 purchased goods. Capital goods is exactly the same approach to measurement. The only distinction between the two is if it's generally bigger ticket items, and I think Molly gave an example. So bigger ticket items, plant, machinery, vehicles, buildings tend to be capitalized in your accounts. So if it's capitalized in your accounts and then kind of depreciated a number of years, then you take the full hit in the period that you've purchased those goods, and it falls into capital goods. The calculation is exactly the same as in purchased goods, but depending on how you treat the purchase in your accounts, that determines where it sits.
Perfect.
So does that mean, Lee, that if you accidentally put it in capital goods, for example, instead of purchase goods, it wouldn't have an impact on your overall carbon footprint? It would just be when you're looking at those individual categories and trying to work out what has the biggest impact. That's if you put it in the wrong place, it would contribute to that, but it wouldn't change your overall total.
Yeah, I mean I guess where it would have unhelpful impact, Annalisa, is if you took the depreciated value and reported it in the reporting year, whereas what you should take is the total. I mean, I know that I mean, ultimately, what it means is that you end up with spikes in your reporting because of the year that you purchase these big ticket items. But of course, you can't depreciate the carbon. That's why it's counted in that way. We can't release the carbon in 5-year steps like we can apply the expense.
Yeah, got it.
Great. And then Marion asked, I don't know if this is something we can maybe show Molly if you've still got the tool open, but where you could log self-generated electricity from solar and other renewables.
So we would, it's a separate category that we haven't got as standard, but if it's something that people want to report on, then we can open that additional category up. So just get in touch. Just to highlight as well that the electricity, if you do have solar panels, for example, the electricity that you put into your national grid will just be the electricity you buy from the grid. It won't, it already takes account of the fact that you're not using a whole load of electricity, which you otherwise will have used if you didn't have the solar panels. So in a way, it's taken into account by the fact that you are using less grid electricity. But if you do want to have a separate line for your self-generated electricity, yes, we can add that in.
Perfect. Then just another quick question on the to do with stock. What is included in textiles? So what does the textiles cover basically?
Lee, are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, I kind of already have. So
Oh, sorry.
I mean, typically we would expect clothing, bedding, laundry to come under textiles, but the ultimate check, if you're unsure as to a particular materials and whether they would fall under that standard industry classification code, is we would look at the supplier for you to establish how they are categorized in terms of their standard industry classification code, and therefore whether we would then report that area of purchase under textiles, just to be sure. And to be clear here, where we're using expenditure for this initial area of reporting, clearly, this is a broad estimated calculation based on the type of materials that you're buying, and then at some point in the future, we will expect that more and more organizations are able to provide you with the actual carbon related to the products that you're buying. And we're seeing this at some levels, but it's nowhere near the reporting that we're doing here yet, and therefore at this point in time we are applying emissions based upon the kind of goods that you're purchasing.
And then types of textiles that would include leather.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Whilst you're doing that, let me have a look in the background, and I will let you know whether leather falls in that as well. I'll let you just move on. I'm going to have a look at that.
That's a very specific question, isn't it? But worthwhile answering. Also, Lee appears to have he's a ghost now, but we've still got him, so I think that's fine. Just on the point that Lee mentioned standard industrial classification codes, Molly, if I'm a business or a community organisation and I want to go through this process of inputting my data and things, do I need to understand what they are? Or is that kind of done in the background for me?
You don't need to know what the description against each of those categories on the platform should give you a good enough understanding of what type of stuff to group together under that category. So,
Right.
for example, textiles. Have you bought a load of textiles? Yes, because I've bought a whole load of uniforms for whoever. Put it under textiles. If you don't know, just email us and we'll help you decide where to put it. We can't, unfortunately, we can't go through all your expense data for you and allocate it for you. But if you've got a particular question, like, for example, I've bought, I know, for example, there was somebody who was a ceramics company. So that person will be buying lots of clay. I don't know where to put my clay that I buy in bulk. There is one under there that I think is ceramics and glass. Which can go into that category, for example. So the description should give you enough of a clue to know where to group it. But if not, then ask us.
Yeah, and I don't need to know where they come from in the government's database or anything like that because it's all embedded in the platform.
Yeah, correct.
Right. Lovely. Claire, I think we've got some others.
Yes, yeah, I think that covers Marion's question quite well. So in terms of getting, just from Marion again, in terms of getting access to the SmartCarbon platform, how should people go about this?
Lee's got his hand up. I'm guessing he's come back on the leather question. Is that?
Leather and reported products is how we would report leather.
Oh, specifically leather.
There
Excellent.
is a specific, there's an SI, standard industry classification code for leather and related products.
So
Yeah.
again, if you're type of thing, if you buy a significant amount of something like that and you don't know where to put it, we can let us know and we can open up a specific category for you. And sorry, the question back to, I'm going to hand over to Lee as well about, was it the rates or was it how to access the account in the first place? Was
How
it
to access, how to access the SmartCarbon platform, but if you could cover rates as well, I think that was also a question that someone had.
So let
Sure.
me cover the rates, and then I'll let Molly cover how to access, because
Yep.
you've got a better handle on that than me in terms of how we're doing it through this program, Molly. But on rates, we've created special rates for the program. If you're kind of incorporated as a community interest company or a charitable organisation, then basically you get a 50% reduction for the first year. And then after that, you've still got an option to get a similar rate over another 3-year term. So it's £170 for the first year, and then 175 for the next 3 if you go on beyond that. If you're an SME, not incorporated anyway as a charity, then the prices start at excuse me, at £305, dependent upon the size of your organisation, and that includes a 10% reduction as part of this programme.
Thanks, Lee. And in terms of actually getting access to your platform, the first step is to fill in the form, and there's a link to the form on the Powering Change website. Is that, I don't know whether if that form's live, Annalisa, whether we could show people where the link is.
Yeah.
So that form, you click on the link, and that form, I think there's around about 30 questions, and it asks you about your organisation. It asks you about what type of organisation you are, very kind of summary terms, what you do, and then it asks you things like, what energy do you use in your building? Do you have any company vehicles? And that allows us to tailor your platform. So once you've filled in that form and submitted it, we will then have that information. We will set up your platform tailored to you, and then we will send you your login details, because part of that form as well collects your email address to send those details to, and then that will all be you set up and ready to go.
Great. Get back to the questions there. For Heather, she's asked that they have mapped the 3 previous years already. Can these be added into the tool and incorporated as well as last year's figures?
Yes, we can do that for you. Again, once we get your information, there should be, I think there's a box at the end for any comments, anything else you want to tell us. So if you can just note that in there, and then we can add additional reporting periods for you onto your account, so you can enter that, the previous year's data as well.
Right. And then an interesting one from Stella. Do you have any clients in North America, and does this platform support emission factors from that region?
I'm not sure whether Lee's already answered that.
Yes,
we.
Yeah,
I
haven't got to it. I haven't got to it yet. I'm trying to scramble my way through. It's great to have so many questions. So we have got organisations who have American sites, and we use the International Energy Agency factors for those American sites. So that reflects the kind of grid intensity in the US. You'd be unsurprised to hear that the US emissions factors are nowhere near as advanced as the UK at this moment in time. So we would then tend to use UK factors for things like burning a litre of diesel, burning a litre of petrol, natural gas, etc. But the grid specifically, we would utilise the International Energy Agency emissions factors.
Lovely. And then last one here at the moment from Marion, just again on the reporting the previous year's emissions. How do they work out a CO2 equivalent mapping score for respective services to be able to let people know who uses our service for their mapping? I think that might be on similar plane to the previous ones about mapping the previous years. So would it be to bring over, as we said before, the previous year's figures into the tool, and then that would give you an overall?
I've got to say, Claire, I'm not clear on the question. I know you're kind of, you've just said there, is this related by mapping? Are we talking about, mapping previous year's emissions? Or I mean, I'm reading through this, Marion. I'm not sure whether the other thing that I thought you might be asking is whether we're able to provide some kind of intensity metric for your area of activity that you can then utilize. Maybe you could kind of follow up and give us a bit. I mean, is it all right, Claire? Maybe we could unmute Marion and ask her to just clarify what.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Either in the chat, or if you want to do it via email,
Yeah.
maybe a wee bit more of an in-depth one, then happy to follow that up later on.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I think we can hear Marion, can't
Yeah.
we? Go ahead.
No, thank you very much for all of this. I was just on the point you made earlier, Lee, about obviously, well, I've been helping organisations map emissions for a while, but we've just been looking inside. When I go to try and find out what someone's services elsewhere their emissions might be. Obviously, I can go and ask them, but say I wanted to help an organisation to help their own customers. So, sorry, I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. With Scope 3, you're mapping up the supply chain and down the supply chain. Now, the ideal going forward is that every organisation will know what emissions are related to their specific services. So whilst I've been helping one organisation map their own emissions, we haven't quite got to the place of working out how we would tell one of our customers or our suppliers how we got to our own score for our own services. Do you see what I mean? It's different. So a service score is different.
Right, okay. So I mean, a good example of that is that Microsoft are kind of requiring their suppliers to do exactly this.
Yeah.
So we have a client who's a global marketing agency, and they are required to report into Microsoft the emissions specific to the services they provide to Microsoft. And so in that regard, when you're measuring that organizational footprint, then you basically have to separate within that measurement what relates to that service provision for that specific client. That's probably at the most sophisticated level. What many organizations are doing as a starting point is providing their overall organizational measurement, Marion, for the reporting period, and then their client will take if you like, a share of those emissions, and they will allocate a share of those emissions based on what they represent in terms of the fiscal share of that organization's business. That is much more where it is across industry at the minute, that people are allocating emissions based on, well, you've got 100 million turnover and we spend 1 million with you, so I'm going to take 1% of your overall emissions. That's kind of the starting point. You're allocating a share based on that. And otherwise, of course, what you do, and going forward, those organizations will calculate their emissions either by individual product, and there's lots of organizations doing that and helping them, or they will map emissions for service provision.
Great, thank you very much.
Perfect. We've also shared a link in the chat that will take you through to the form for SmartCarbon support. Is there any other questions at the moment? Because I think we've worked through quite a good variety just there. I think that might be us just now.
Super. Well, if there's any more before the end, feel free to pop them in chat. Thank you very much for your questions, everybody. Before we go, I'll just give you a reminder about what we have upcoming on the programme. So first thing is this week, so on Friday, Molly and I and our colleague Oliver and Lee will be down. We've got 3 sessions running essentially at the chamber, council chamber on Bowling Green Road. So we're starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. We've got a focused session for businesses. And then in the afternoon from 2 o'clock, we've got a focused session for community organisations. If you are interested in coming and you are, for example, a community organisation and you can't make the afternoon session, please just do book in for the morning session. We'll be trying to kind of tailor the sessions to who's in the room at the time. So I think some of the discussions that we've had already today have been really helpful in terms of distilling some of those different categories and topic areas and things, and some of the questions that have been coming through on the grants as well. Are really good to have those discussions in a forum with other people who are going through the same process as well. So if you can't make the afternoon session, but you can make the morning session, even if you don't think you fit in that business category, do feel free to attend them. Over the lunchtime period, we'll all be still there taking kind of one-on-one questions, so we can go into a little bit more detail about your grant applications, but also what the SmartCarbon platform looks like. If you've had any struggles trying to log on to it, then we can take you through that. So we'll be there in person all day, essentially answering all of your questions and giving you a little bit more detail about the carbon reduction plan process, the actual grant forms themselves, how to complete those, what you need to start getting in terms of materials and information to fill those out. We've also got a case study that we'll be running through. So we've got a kind of guest speaker to just give you an example of the sort of things that has been funded elsewhere, how they went about doing that, and the benefits of looking at your energy use and trying to tackle that and tackle carbon emissions at the same time. We've included a registration link there, which will be on the slides and on the website anyway. So you can go to poweringchange.urbanforesight.com to sign up for that event. We also have from next week essentially some repeats of the webinars that we've already been running. So all of these webinars will be available on our through our website on our YouTube platform. But we get different questions for every session. And what we'll be doing is slightly tweaking the future sessions so that it picks up some of the frequently asked questions that we've already had. And obviously we've got a different group in the room each time. So if you want a reminder about how to go through this whole process, what the platform looks like, you want to ask more questions, feel free to book onto a repeat session. That's absolutely fine. If you know people who would like to attend these sessions, feel free to send the link over to them. It's very much similar content, but it won't be exactly the same each time. So there's lots of opportunities to engage with us. What we will do is send out a follow-up after this webinar with the links so that you can sign up for the SmartCarbon platform itself, so you can start kind of touching and feeling it and looking at the data that you might want to put in. There's also a booking link on the website to sign up for one-on-one support. That's directly with me or with Oliver, who was on the first webinar, so we can take you through that grant application process if you're not there on Friday, or indeed if you do come along on Friday and you want some additional support before you get your grant application in. So there's plenty of opportunities for us to talk to you in person and for you to talk to other people who are kind of going through the same process. Other than that, I think it's for me to say thank you very much, Molly, Lee, Claire. Lots of tricky questions, but actually we got down to the bottom of some of them. And if you do have any more questions for us, you're very welcome to send us an email at poweringchange@urbanforesight.com or go onto the website. we'll close it there. Thanks very much, everybody, and hope to see some of you later in the week.